it's so funny to look like how the fundamentals hold up. Things change, the industry change, but the fundamentals hold up for something like the web, and sometimes that's exactly what we need to do. We need to go back to the basics so we can invent the new future. And I'm like, yeah, this is so funny to go full circle, So yeah, that's how I started. Yeah.
Hola and welcome! I am your host, Michelle Ferreira. On our first ever Latinx Who Design episode, I had the pleasure of interviewing a former colleague of mine from Booking.com, Tassia Pellegrini. Tassia is a Brazilian designer from Salvador, Bahia, who is now living in the Netherlands. She has worked for Booking.com for 6 years, both as an individual contributor and as a design leader. Now, at Basecamp, she's busy crafting new features for Hey, a new approach to email. And now, Tassia Pellegrini. Hi, Tassia. How are you?
Hi. I'm great. Yeah. How about you?
Good. So you are in Amsterdam. Actually, what's the name of the city?
It's Purmerend.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. It's just the corner of Amsterdam, like 20 minutes by bus. So yeah, that's amazing. Very, very nearby.
How's it living there compared to living in Brazil?
Wow, cold. I think that's the first thing that I noticed, that, the climate is completely different from Salvador. So yeah, we just came from a couple of centimeters of snow and frozen canals to spring weather. So it also changes so fast. It's nice, but sometimes a bit frustrating as well.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
So I would love to hear about your work experience and where you're working right now. So can you tell us a little bit more about being a senior designer at Basecamp?
Yeah, it's quite a new experience. I joined them like 2 months ago after waiting 4 years for this opportunity because Basecamp never hires, right? So I was actually so ready to take a sabbatical, and I was like, I'm not even sure I want to stay in tech, and suddenly they just appeared with this vacancy. I was like, oh my God, I need to apply. So I did, and here I am. And on those first 2 months, I'm working with Hey, the new approach to email, the new features of Basecamp, and it's been amazing. I'm learning so much with my colleagues and with the approach and philosophy of the company. The fact it's a remote-first company as well, it's something that is different. Of course, with the pandemic, I've been working remotely since last year for pretty much a full year, but it's a completely different approach when you come with that mentality as bare bones of the company, right? So that has been refreshing, and I'm really enjoying that.
And was it a big change from Booking.com?
Yeah, Booking is a gigantic company. So Basecamp in comparison is very small. We have now 60 people and Booking was in the thousands. So it's a different set of scale. And the main difference also is the design team is way smaller. We are now like 7 designers in comparison to Booking that was around 200. So it's a different vibe altogether. And I really enjoy my time at Booking, but definitely coming to a company that it's smaller brings different perspectives. And it's an adjustment that for me was easy because the way I like to work is pretty much very aligned with Basecamp. But of course, there is a lot of things to relearn and to re-engage with a small team. That's definitely a big difference.
Yeah, we joke that joining a new company, the first 90 days is like drinking out of a fire hose.
Yes.
Basically getting hit with all the information in the face. So the change from remote because you have to, because of the pandemic, to a remote first company, how has that been for you?
Just look at my calendar. I had like 2 Zoom calls in the whole week. and they were social calls, so we could see each other and relate. Everything is pretty much asynchronous. Of course, if we have really important decisions, we hop on a Zoom call or whatever. But that's not the norm, and that's the main difference, because I felt like being remote, because you have to kind of ported out the bad behaviors that we have around meetings that we just take for granted, because we don't really give sometimes enough thinking on how to make them better. So we just go with it. We have to do it. So we just go. And the way you go remote is like you just transfer that to Zoom. So you end up sometimes in Zoom calls the whole day. And yeah, that's just the nature of a sudden change that the pandemic brought to us. So it's not anyone's fault. It's just like, oh, suddenly we had to do this and we are not quite sure how to do it. And people are learning. And I feel like companies are doing better at that as well. But going to Basecamp is it's just not an adaptation. It was there from the beginning. So it didn't change much for me or the other individuals. Other than now, people has to work from home instead of going maybe to a co-working location or maybe, some other destination that they would like to spend more time with because they can't travel. So yeah, I think that was the most change for people at Basecamp, but the remote, asynchronous, no meeting aspects stays pretty much the same.
That's awesome. So I'm gonna take it way back. Yeah. I want to hear how you got to the Netherlands. How did this all start? Where did because again, you are from Bahia, Brazil.
Yes.
And you're living in the Netherlands for the last 7 years, yes.
Almost 7 years, yeah.
So how did that happen?
Well, yeah, I always wanted to have that kind of experience, but I never had the chance. As a student, it was never possible for lack of money or opportunities right there. So it was a dream that I had to explore the world in a way, to have an international experience, either studying or working, just, to get to know all the cultures and get more mature as a person and as a professional. So when I was 25, I decided that I was going to make that dream a reality. I didn't know how, but I was like, I was going to figure that out. It's time for me to stop waiting for it to happen and do it. So I started researching which companies were hiring and what they were looking for in a designer, and if I was already there or if I needed to become the designer that they wanted to hire. So I saw a couple of companies like Microsoft, ThoughtWorks, and Booking because I knew them. And I was curious about what they were looking for in a designer. So I looked at their job openings and dissected that. I was like, okay, I can fit a bunch of those criteria. I'm just not selling myself for that. And sometimes I'm not even believing that I have that, but definitely I do. Just look at my portfolio, just look at my experience. So it's just a matter of organizing myself, my life, so that I can apply for those positions. And I decided to go for Booking because it was a product that I knew already, and it was in Europe, which I had way more interest in trying to instead of US or Canada. And then I was like, it's a big shot. So I will try. So I redid my portfolio. I translated that to English because it was in Portuguese at the time. Created a new curriculum. So I think a new resume. I think that was also nice to fit my portfolio. And just research more about the company, who was working there, the design, philosophy, just to get to know them better. The first time I applied, it didn't go through. It just, they have a very generic hiring platform. So I think they just, ignored me because I didn't have, certain college degree or whatever that they were looking for. But then the second time was still the same year, was for a different position, it's still in design. It magically went through. So they were like, okay, let's now get face to face with this person, in this case, first a call. And from that, I started my process, and suddenly I was here. So that's how that happened. It was way faster than I thought, was way smoother than I thought, but I think also because I was just afraid of the big change that it would be to go to another country. So I was putting all these barriers in my head, like, oh my God, it's going to be complicated, the visa situation, the money that I don't have. But then you realize, like, those bigger companies, they do have the budget to sponsor you, your visa, and to help you move. So that was a relief to know that this was a possibility. And that's how I started the second half of my career, and which I believe was the fundamental step for me to grow as a person and as a professional. I jokingly say, but not jokingly, that I grew up at Booking. I grew up in the Netherlands, because those 5-6 years outside your hometown really feels like 10, because it's so many things you have to get used to, a new language. In this case, for me, 2 new languages, because English is not my mother language, and I was still very rough at the time, plus Dutch, which I always wanted to learn, and now I speak it enough to be a citizen. So I'm a Dutch citizen now. But it was insane at the beginning to get all those things internalized in your first 3 months, your first year. So I think, like, those things that I was afraid of actually didn't come true. It was way easier. It's just a matter of, what do I want? What do I need to do to get what I want? What kind of support do I need? Can I ask for help if needed? In my case, I didn't know anyone. That was another thing. I didn't have a network of international friends working for other companies. So I got to open the door myself. And that was one of the most terrifying things for me, because I always feel like I'm inadequate to do this, that I feel like I'm not good enough or anything like that. It almost prevented me from applying to Basecamp. I was like, I know there's a lot of people applying. They're very good. So who am I to do that? But then I realized that, well, 6 years ago, I thought the same, and it's just a matter of not hearing this voice in your head and be honest and see that as a way of, if it goes wrong, at least I've learned. So I thought, if it goes wrong with Booking, at least I learned how to build a better portfolio. I learned how to make a nice resume. I improved my knowledge about business and the travel industry, right? So it's not a waste of time. And the same thing was for Basecamp. If everything goes wrong, I build a nice portfolio, a nice application. I learned more about their business and so on. And I'm glad it went through both times. But yeah, I didn't see that as, I'm going to waste my time. And I think this helps, this mindset of, I'm going to learn regardless of the result. And this helps you keep going. And I think helps you reduce the fear of not working out, because that's only in your head. So yeah, that's what happened 6 years ago. Yeah.
That's an amazing mindset. Thank you for sharing. That was a great story. I love the learning mindset. The idea of, if you fail, you're going to learn from it. I think that's a great takeaway. We talk a lot about outputs, and you said, like, well, I made my portfolio, and but you also learned from it, right? So I really enjoyed that. One thing I wanted to ask you is, but what got you into design in the first place? How did you start this journey?
Yeah, I got my first contact with the internet when I was around 12 years old. My sister is older than me. She was in college, and she saved some money, some hard-earned money of hers to buy a used computer. It was horrible, the computer, if we look now back in time. But at the time was amazing. It was a new thing for us. And we had dial-up connection. And I found that fascinating because it just could go to pages that people created and they just put out there. You just type a weird address in a bar and you're visiting, another country's language, seeing pictures and stuff. And I was like, wow, I want to do this. I want to be the person creating those things. No idea how, have no idea how the internet works. My family was like not really into the internet or technology. So everything was new for us. So I didn't have anyone to ask because most of my friends never heard of the internet. I was just like in a very, small slice in time that I had the chance to see that thing because my sister needed that, So it took me 4 years to realize how actually one makes a website. I tried everything. I tried making websites on Word, but I didn't know how to publish. There was this weird thing called HTML that at the time I was like, what the hell is that? No idea. And, I was just breaking a lot of things and frustrated because I think I can make something, but I can't put that online because I didn't know anything about publishing or deploying, Then there were GeoCities and those things, but I was like, but I can't customize it, So I was already on that feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to do my way. So when I was around 15, I actually had a better internet connection. The computer wasn't so crappy anymore. And I had a little bit of English under my belt that I could now read tutorials and stuff. And then realize, so that's how you do this. Oh, okay. So I started learning more about how to build a website. And initially I was copying all the code that I saw places and pasting and see, like throwing spaghetti on the wall and see what happens. There was like learning like that until I finally got into books and things that taught me how to do it. And then I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm going to be a webmaster or whatever. But then I was really focusing on how to make that thing beautiful, And I was like, I want to make this nice. I want to make this interesting. And then I got into learning fireworks. I wanted really to learn Photoshop, but my computer didn't run it. It was too heavy for my computer. So I actually had to learn everything I wanted with fireworks. Of course, vector was amazing to do there, so I learned that. But even photo editing and using the pen tool to cut backgrounds and stuff, I used fireworks for everything because I didn't have an option. And then I got into Flash because why not? Flash was amazing and taught me a lot about interaction in general. And I also learning those by books and by myself. And when I was 17, my parents were like, you seem to really like this. You just finished, high school. So I think you need something to do until you go to college. So we will pay you the course that you want so much, that is this web design course. But when I went there, I had already read all those books. I made all those projects. So after a couple of modules, my teacher was like, don't you want to teach here? And I was like, no, I'm an introvert. I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to be in front of anything. So he actually created a trap. We had those classes on Saturdays. So it was an important class on that day with a lot of information between Flash and fireworks, all those interactions. And he simply didn't appear. And he told the coordinator that he was like, ask Tassia to lead the room and to teach because she can do it. But he didn't tell me that, So suddenly the coordinator was like, oh yeah, your teacher told me that you should take the class. And I was like, what? No, no way. He was joking. I don't know. He's crazy. But then there were like 20 people waiting, right? They didn't want to cancel. So I felt like, okay, and they had to put some kind of thing to make you visible as a teacher. And I felt so weird under that thing. And then suddenly I was in front of the class, but something switched in my brain. I just loved it. I loved teaching. And at some point, I think by the end of the class, one of the students stopped me and he was like, I need to go out. And he talked to the coordinator to actually make me the teacher for reals, to really replace the other teacher with me, which was what my teacher wanted because he wanted to quit. And I was like, how is this happening? So suddenly I became indeed a designer there, a teacher, because now it was a serious thing. I would have this, room to teach. And then I got all those other classes. And a year later, I was working as a web designer with the title that they gave me, web designer, in a newspaper in Salvador. It was the biggest newspaper in the Northeast. So it was an amazing experience to be a web designer, such at that age when the internet was also shifting more to UX design, which was what got me into product design. So I was always interested in the web. That's why I started with wanting to make websites, but I definitely tinkered with graphic design, which is something that I still love, and especially editorial and branding. Those are things that I really enjoy. But the web was always my thing, was always the thing that kept me going from 12 years old until that first job. And it's exactly the same kind of knowledge that I'm using today. It's so funny to look like how the fundamentals hold up. Things change, the industry change, but the fundamentals hold up for something like the web, and sometimes that's exactly what we need to do. We need to go back to the basics so we can invent the new future. And I'm like, yeah, this is so funny to go full circle, So yeah, that's how I started. Yeah.
That's so cool. Let me ask you one more thing about the beginning. So you mentioned that you went to this computer school, and we hear a lot about, people going to UX courses, UX boot camps. Do you have to have formal education or not? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that was a very informal computer school. You have people from all ages, just curious people. We didn't have at the time this idea of boot camps, where you would go and be immediately employable. Literally, people in my class had no idea what they were studying. Someone just sold them, web design, you're going to have some new skills and those are going to be important. But those people, they wanted to learn Excel, they want to learn all those other things. We're just there because someone sold that this package was probably cheaper. I was the weirdo who really wanted to work on that area. But at the time, there wasn't a market in Salvador for that, like Sao Paulo was booming, Rio maybe, but Salvador, people were like, my mom was like, I don't think you can make a career out of this. You're doing that for fun because you like computers. But, you should do like your sister who is a, Portuguese teacher. She's doing so well. She's teaching, for the government. She has a stable job and everything is fine. But you can't find a job, it's this whole thing, like what you actually do, I don't understand. So, when I got that job as a teacher, she was a bit like, oh yeah, she was just, teach this for the whole life. But she knew that I really wanted to work as a designer, but that was such a weird idea at the time. So there wasn't a market for it. There wasn't boot camps that would put you into a career path. So it was just like luck that I was able to hold that vision of, I really want to work with this. I really want to use this not only as a hobby, but something that I can make something out of that. But in the beginning, I also was a bit skeptical of that. That's why I didn't go to the design college. I went actually to study languages for my first year in the public university, following my sister's path, because I was like, if everything goes wrong, if I can't make the ends meet with my design skills, I can at least translate stuff, like if translators really, get that much money either, especially Salvador. So I was like, yeah, at least it's a solid academic path, But after my first year, I was like, definitely, I am not doing this. I rather not have a degree and risk myself being a degreeless person rather than do something I don't really want, just, to have something to show for.
That never stopped you.
No. So after that, this thing, I was always doing design on the side. So after a year, that's when I got that job on the newspaper, and I was like, yeah, I'm dropping college to work, which was counterintuitive to everything that you were taught. You do the other way around. You go to college, they work. And it was like going through that direction. That is not something my family was comfortable with, but they were like, okay, it's fine. I mean, you do you. We're here. If you can support that, cool. But, we'll be watching. You're not crazy. We can kind of trust, you, but we don't know. Maybe it's just a phase. That kind of feeling. It's just a phase. But I kept going because I really wanted. And slowly, tech grew as a field everywhere. Even though in Salvador it wasn't well paid or well understood, people still needed people to make their apps and websites. So the idea that those schools, they weren't really preparing you for this new need, because they were just computer schools. They're not boot camps. They weren't talking about UX theory. This was still new and booming at the time in the US and in Europe, but not very much in Salvador. And even in Brazil, the hub was still Sao Paulo, where you would go to conferences and things like that. So I started doing that to transition from that idea of I'm just a thinker to I'm really thinking about the user experience. I want to bring that to my career. And that's what I started going to conferences and started improving my English so I could read more books and articles and things from the other parts of the world. And that expanded my design vocabulary so much that I was like, yeah, I really found my tribe. This is where I want to go. And that helped me pave my way easier with the booming of tech as well. But it took me 5 years until I felt like I really had the opportunity to feel confident that I could make this my main source of income. So it took a while for me to feel like, yeah, now I can make this a career. But I always hold the vision and try to use that as an inspiration to guide me which steps to take based on my own circumstances, preferences, and situation.
You mentioned inspiration. I'm going to ask you, what inspires you today?
Today, wow, many things. I'm really into music, not because I'm good at it, but because I just enjoy it. Those things that you enjoy intrinsically. And I realized more recently that there are things that you just do because you have to do them, not because you need to be good, not because you need to share with anyone. You just do because you like doing them, whatever that is. For some people it's playing video games, for some people it's doing some kind of sports or some side hobby that they build an app or anything, but something that they don't do because they want to be big in that area. They just do because they want to do it. There's this intrinsic motivation that pushes them to do something. And I have that with music. And that mentality that I realized that I had with music was what started inspiring me to bring that beginner's mind back to design. And what I mean by that is the realization that I had quite recently about being a beginner, because it's a word that sometimes we don't understand because we use it freely. But the reality of being a beginner doesn't mean that you are always clueless, you can be a beginner with a lot of experience under your belt, just a beginner at that moment in time that you're doing something new, And the beginner's mind, I brought from 10 years of doing martial arts. I did karate for 10 years. And, everyone thinks like when you reach the black belt, that it's the end road, that's it. But the reality is that there is probably 30 plus years of things that you need to learn after the black belt. So definitely you become a beginner again. The concept of Shoshin to become a beginner yet again. But you still have a lot of experience. You're not clueless. A black belt is not clueless. So this idea inspires me a lot. And I've been drawing this inspiration from martial arts and from music back to work. And that has helped me tremendously. Yeah. And other than that, I try to look at other industries. I like architecture, I like, as I said before, graphic design in general, the crazy explorations in graphic design. And I love looking at it, photography. I think it's impressive how you can capture so many beautiful moments with so many different things today, smartphones, cameras. I think people are so creative with the democratization of devices. And I find that very beautiful. So I draw inspiration from those places. I've been out of social media now, and this gave me more time to appreciate those other things like music, architecture, walking nature. Wow, I sometimes walk in nature and I had some ideas from just looking at trees. And this is sometimes I talk to my friends, they're like, what are you using? I'm like, nothing. I just go to the trees. They're amazing. You just get out of the screen and you have that. And I think like people who have families, pets, and other things like that experience that sometimes without noticing, that kind of shifting from being on a screen all the time, which is part of our work, to be moving and being around other people and other environments and doing something totally different from your day-to-day job. They can access those kinds of inspirations as well, I believe. So, yeah.
You mentioned going into nature, and you also mentioned taking a sabbatical earlier. So am I to guess that your goal was to move into the top of a mountain and become a hermit?
Yes, that's definitely it. Yeah, I am an introverted person. So at Booking, I also became a lead designer at some point, which was an amazing experience. But for me, that was really challenging as an introvert, not because they wanted me to be on stage speaking all the time, but just because my calendar was totally out of my hands. And I think that's the nature that you sometimes go to with some career paths, which are totally okay if you like it. And for me, it was also something that I told myself, I'm going to experiment with this to see if it's something I like, because I love helping people. I love mentoring. I love teaching. But there's a bunch of other things that you do as a leader or as a manager that you really need to like in order to thrive on that environment. And for me, it was like, I really am an individual contributor. I like to sit down on my space with my things, not be interrupted, work and share, but on my time, on my own terms. And after 6 years working there and having those different experimentations with my career, I was so ready to do a sabbatical. I was like, yeah, I will quit Booking because we are in the middle of a pandemic and it's been 6 years. I just became a Dutch citizen, so I can stay here and buy, I will downsize. So I sold my house, bought an apartment that was way smaller, sold a bunch of things, and was announcing to everyone, going on a sabbatical, that's it. I'm just going to play drums. I'm quitting Netflix, social media, And yeah, that's it. I don't even have a TV anymore. I sold, video games, I sold everything. It was like, I am going out. No one is going to find me. And that's it. But then Basecamp opening, their vacancy. And I was like, okay, I think I can still do all that because, they value a lot your individual contribution in your own time, no interruptions or anything. And I thought, yeah, that's a great fit for me then. So I still move to a smaller place. I don't have TV, I don't have, Netflix, but at the same time, I have a lot of records to listen to. I have a drum set to play with, and I'm closer to nature, so I can just walk around whenever the weather allows me to do so. And that has been great. But the reason was just that I was feeling overwhelmed with the career growth of, a big company and everything else happening around me. I just felt like I needed to recharge. And recharging for me sometimes requires those measures of just being quiet. And in the beginning, I was afraid of that because I think externally, we might feel like if you're not on Twitter, if you don't have a blog, if you don't have a hot side project, that you're falling behind in design, that you're not really participating in the design community and things like that. And I was really afraid to just disappear out of that and feel bad that I'm not in the design community anymore. And then I realized that that's not it. That's not why I do design. It's not to be, a member of the design community. I do design because I like doing design, and I can do design anywhere. I can do that in the top of a mountain. I can do that in the stage. I can do that, whatever I feel like. So it's not something that I should be afraid if it doesn't speak to me, So I was like, yeah, I will experiment with that. And it has been great. It has been great for my mental health. It has been great for my concentration levels. It has paradoxically connected me with people because now I truly ask them how they're doing. I'm not assuming by things that I see online, and it also gives me personally more eagerness to talk to others. It's like, I'm not seeing you online because I don't have social media. So yeah, if you talk to me or I talk to you, I really want to connect. And that has been great. It's not true for everyone, right? Some people has a very healthy relationship with all those things. And this is awesome. Some people get their inspiration from what they see on social media and the kind of content they create and they consume. And this is amazing. I think there's really good positive sides on all of that. Video games, Netflix, social media, do it if it gives you energy and inspiration. But for me, it was something that I assumed it gave me when I realized it wasn't true for myself. So that's where I started to be more honest with me. What do I really need? And I realized, I don't care about titles. I like being individual contributor, and I just want to have my space for myself. So I'm going to do it, even if it means being a bit of a hermit. It's not going to impact my career because that's how I want my career to go, to be independent of being on the public, And for some people, it's the other way around. And that's beautiful because we need them as well. We need people that is vocal and that can, dent, the situation of the design community. But that's not what I want to do. And that's fine.
I love your story. I also love that Basecamp with the position out just in the right time. So you didn't move to the mountains, because I'm not sure if you would find a mountain in the Netherlands, and internet connection over there to keep you working remotely. So I'm glad that
would be
happened.
too remote.
It would be too remote. So I'm really glad that happened, because that way we could still connect and talk about it.
Yes.
And I love that you're sharing your story with everyone. Even though, like you said, you're not in social media and you're not really sharing all these things all the time. So I would like to ask you then, if you were talking to a new Latinx designer starting out today, what would you give them as advice, or what would you share from your story that you think would be valuable to them to know?
Yeah, I think one thing I would like to say would be to do not be afraid of opening your own doors. And the reason I say that is because sometimes we are afraid that, we need to have those connections, we need to network, we need to know someone, to get into this industry or to get into this company. And in reality, like, this is awesome if you have mentors or a strong network. This is great. But I didn't know anyone when I wanted to go to Europe or when I wanted to grow in my career. I had to simply open the door myself. And it is scary, because you will ask yourself, who am I, to just go and apply to this company or this position? Or who am I to ask this question to this person that I admire, and ask for mentorship or whatever. But do it, because sometimes it's the only option you have, and we hope that things get easier for everyone over time. And I think now with more companies hiring with the right roles and being inclusive, this is gonna indeed help. But don't be afraid of opening your own door. You can do this. And for me, it was scary, but was exactly what I needed to get where I am today. Both times, both at the beginning, now, and I realized it's just going to be like that. I can just wait for the door to open or to appear. And I can't wait for my network to look at me, be like, oh, we should really hire you. I really need to go and open that door and use my friends and network to support me, and do the same for them. But do the first step, especially if you feel like you're not being confident enough. It's sometimes just a matter of looking truly at yourself and be like, yep, I have the skills necessary to become the level of designer that they're hiring, or I'm almost there, or I'm already there, or I passed that, and I'm just not seeing myself because, of stories that we tell ourselves or some traumas that we have with some companies that we worked for. Don't let those things limit you. Open your door. You can do this.
That's amazing. Open your doors, people. You can do it. So thank you, Tassia, for joining me. I know it's super late there in the Netherlands. So thanks for taking the time, and we should do more of this. We should catch up more.
Yes.
Don't go into the mountains.
No, I still have internet, so we can do this again.
Right. Hey, I almost forgot. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe. Also, rate us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Thank you.